Kraus pumps once, is in trouble, eludes a tackle, gets out of the end zone. He's to the 5, he's to the 10, Kraus to the 15, out across the 20, Kraus to the 25, out across the 30, 35, 40, look out, he could go, he's to the 40, he's to the 30, he's to the 20, he's to the 10, he's all the way!
Right on the end. The snap is down. The kick is up. The kick is on its way, and the kick is good! Banks it in there! 57 yards out of school record to put the Huskers in front, 33-31. To the near side. Kellogg gets a shotgun snap. Final play of the game. Ron waiting for the wideouts to get downfield. Launches the throw down toward the goal line. Going up. Ball tipped in the air. Caught! Touchdown! Jordan Westerkamp! Nebraska wins the game on the final play of the contest! Oh, baby!
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! What a scene in Lincoln, baby! Woo!
Deep for Nebraska. Here's Wiley's kick. It's high. It holds up there. Rogers takes the ball at the 30. He's hit and got away. Back upfield to the 35, to the 40. He's to the 45. He's to the 50, to the 45, to the 40, to the 35, to the 20, to the 10. He's all the way home. Holy moly. Man, woman, and child did that. Put him in the aisle. Johnny the Jet Rogers just tore them loose from their shoes.
Hello, and welcome to 5 Points of Contact. This is the name we made up for the preview show we try to do every week when we're meeting with somebody who's a representative of the other team, the enemy, and we get their perspective on the upcoming game. And this week it is Michigan State, the Michigan State Spartans, and I'm here with Kevin Knight, who used to write at Corn Nation, and then he left me in a huff. And he went over to be the assistant man editor at Spartans Illustrated. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing well. Definitely a lot better now that I'm not in that Minneapolis cold.
Well, it is. It's winter I got into an argument with my son about thought I was being too wimpy about how, I think he prefers it like like below Kelvin temperatures or something. I don't know. Look at this. Brandon E said goosebumps. I got goosebumps during that intro too. It was nice to hear radio calls and stuff like that from back when we were good. Do you know any of those plays?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident. I watched the Oregon game. For example, I caught that clip, but I honestly couldn't tell you anything about either the Nebraska game in Eugene or in Lincoln. Play wise, if I'm being honest.
Well, the last bit there is Lyle Brimser doing the call for the 1971 Johnny Rogers punt return against Oklahoma. I'm getting way off track here. We're supposed to be talking about the Spartans. So I'm going to start with this. The line that I checked right before I came on here is 3.5 points. I don't know. You probably don't bet. I don't bet. The 3.5 points, do you think that's a good line? I mean, I'm kind of surprised by it.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, I guess if Michigan State's going to lose, they're probably going to lose by a lot more than 3.5 points, honestly. But if they, I don't know, I guess pull in Iowa, right? Iowa, the Spartans actually almost kept that one close. It's been a lot of blowouts this season. It's getting hard to keep track of which ones were actually close. 3.5 is probably fair because it's at Michigan State, and it's not like Nebraska's having a strong season. No offense to the Huskers. They're definitely they turned it around in October, so to speak. But yeah, it's a road game in the Big Ten in November. Those aren't the easiest thing in the world, but the Spartans are 2-6 at this point. So
yeah, the over under is like 34.5. That is low. It's very low. It's not as bad as like Northwestern Iowa coming up this weekend, but it is extremely low. So I would assume they think nobody's going to score any points whatsoever. What the hell is going on in East Lansing? And should we start with Mel Tucker? Does everybody know that story? Do you want to not talk about it? Is Mel Tucker going to get any of his money at all? Let me ask that.
Yeah, I mean, so my personal view is that I would not be surprised if there's some sort of a settlement offered, because it's highly likely Michigan State has employment insurance on his contract. And at the end of the day, it's going to be cheaper for the insurer to offer a settlement than it is to go through the litigation process, which they will hands down win, but then spending all the money on the lawyers and the court fees and waiting out all of that process and whatnot is going to cost them more than just offering him a check to go away. And that's going to be a decision by the insurance company, not Michigan State. Although if it is up to MSU, they're going to take it to court and make sure he doesn't get a dime, because he's not going to get a dime. Like, at the end of the day, yeah, eventually it was determined that he was guilty of sexually harassing the university vendor there. But I mean, they had grounds to fire him for cause besides that. At the end of the day, the guy was just a boneheaded idiot, even if he wasn't guilty based on the hearing of sexual assault. So, you know, he's gone. He's bye-bye. And you know, he'll probably get a little bit of spending money, so to speak, to take care of that. What are those stupid things called? Those like Yamaha 3-wheel things. Anyway,
God, I don't know.
Slingshot. That's it. Yeah.
Really?
He'll get some gas money for the slingshot.
Okay, here I have to ask this question. Brett asked it for us. Brett says, my thoughts are that the whole thing was just a way to get rid of Tucker without having the payout, which is shady, and I could be wrong, but I wouldn't put it past any college to pull that. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think just about any college out there would have kept Mel Tucker, given the situation that he put himself in. Was it a convenient way to avoid shelling out, you know, $70 some odd million? I think almost $80 total left on his $80 million left on his contract. Sure. Yeah, it was. But I mean,
he did this to himself.
Yeah. I mean, the guy brought in a high profile woman to talk about the problems of sexual harassment and sexual assault in college athletics, and then proceeded to very clearly put himself in a situation where he was found guilty of sexually harassing her himself, as she's a university vendor being talked about being brought back for another paid event with the university, and then eventually cancels it when she doesn't seem to give back on the romantic interest. It's a very boneheaded decision. I mean, if he was Urban Meyer and just got caught having a mid 20 something dancing up on him at a bar, like, that's not remotely the same thing here.
I think the thing is that people don't get. I work for a university. I do a lot of work for the University of Minnesota, and there's very clear rules to the relationships you establish and what happens with those relationships. And you can't be doing what he was doing, because there's a lot of imbalance in the relationship, and that's where fraud happens and things like that, and bad things happen. So they're clearly I don't sign the contracts for the U that I do, but they're in there. I know that. So, okay, you mentioned the name, so we have to do this before we get to football. Wow, we're really zoomed in here. Let's do that. Okay, is that better? I think that's better. It's not like, oh. Okay, James Boardman says, any truth to Michigan State contacting Urban Meyer, or is it just Sparty porn?
So there is a high-profile Michigan State donor who would pony up all the money needed for Urban Meyer if Michigan State and Urban Meyer want to join hands and sing Kumbaya at the 50, going 7-0 against the University of Michigan as his swan song. Michigan State doesn't want that, and Urban Meyer doesn't want that. And as far as we know, Urban Meyer has not been to visit East Lansing. And as far as we know, Alan Haller is having one heck of a very tight-lipped search at this point, because I don't think a single media member actually knows who he's pursuing at this point. And I guarantee you it's got to be getting to the point where he's got his target list and he's putting out feelers with their agents, because it's now November 1, and Urban Meyer's not one of them. So
should we talk about the game?
yeah, well, I'll make one more joke about that. Is there seems to be this like constant swing with, Urban Meyer to East Lansing, I think, is at this percentage today, and I for some reason I think of the Dr. Seuss book, the Snorks, I think it was, but the one where they have the machine that puts the stars on the non-star bellies, and then the ones that had the stars get them taken off. Yeah, and so I joke that the Urban Meyer machine is a basically like that. Like on Thursday, the star on machine says that Urban to East Lansing is at 50%, and on Saturday it's down. The star off machine has dropped it down to 32%. So it's any given week, it's a star on and star off machine.
Well, you know what? We're going to stay here on this. Brett comes back and says, "Question for Kevin: who are your top choices to replace Tucker?" Which, we'll do this for a bit and then we'll get into the game. Who are who do you think and who do you want?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. That I've had asked several times, and I honestly don't know. I mean, there's a couple good choices out there. I mean, Duke's head coach is a good name. Washington's head coach is a good name. Are either of them interested in the MSU job? Yeah, I don't have any suggestion to say that they would be. I mean, Deion Sanders wouldn't be a great fit. I heard he can
heard he can turn a roster over an entire 1 year. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, hey, maybe Jim Harbaugh is going to be looking for a job soon. Not sure how well he'd do in East Lansing if Connor Stallions doesn't go with him, but
wow, we got to get those shots in. Tony White, defensive coordinator for Nebraska.
It hasn't been a name that I've heard come up, but maybe.
We live in fear.
Never say never.
I mean, people are just like, "Oh my God, we can't let this guy leave," and everything. So, I've probably irritated half the people on this live stream. But there's been no names come out. Not even rumors, I suppose. Duke's coach. I don't know. What do you see Michigan State getting? I mean, you guys have gone through a couple scandals already, and now you got Mel Tucker to deal with. I guess I'm dancing around the issue. Do you think Michigan State can pull in a top flight coach, and why?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in part, what's the definition of a top flight coach at this point? Because I mean, guys who have national title rings that are going to come to East Lansing, there's not very many of them around in the first place, which is why Urban Meyer obviously is the top name everybody loves to throw out for just about every job out there. Michigan State is the most high profile job to date this season right now. So that's why I think you see his name mostly tied that and the Big Ten, obviously, and a chance to beat Michigan, of course, which I'm sure entices Meyer. But I mean, again, he's not coming to East Lansing. Yeah, I mean, the Spartans are a strong program. There's some issues with NIL, obviously, ponying up for that a bit. But I mean, look at the contract that Tucker was able to get. It's not like
that's true.
They're lacking. Yeah, I mean, they have several billionaire, high-profile alumni out there in the world, and for a contract for the coach, certainly they can pony up. Can NIL money come to entice the players that kind of high-profile coach wants? It's there. Is it there on the same level that SEC schools have? Maybe not necessarily. I mean, look at some of the guys that Michigan State lost this off season, namely, Peyton Thorne, for example, to Auburn. So in that regard, there's certainly some detractions, and yeah, there's some issues with scandals, and that's another reason why Urban Meyer's not coming is scandal. Michigan State's not interested in that. Urban Meyer's not interested in the fishbowl lens that the media is going to have for Michigan State as a result of that. So, but Mark D'Antonio had quite a bit of success, and Mel Tucker had one great season. Michigan State's not that much different than just about any other Big Ten job, with the addition of the 4 West Coast teams in terms of who would they get, so
Right.
yeah. So sorry, go ahead.
Linda's a regular. Linda Wilkins says Dabo Sweeney after he's fired from Clemson. What do you think of that?
I don't think Dabo Sweeney would be a target necessarily. He doesn't quite feel like the country club hire that the Big Ten looks for. He's a little more of the Southern. I want to go out mudding and hunting over the weekend with you to the donors, rather than the country club donor where you go in and you have the ritzy dinner, so to speak. So the Big Ten looks more for, on average, for a country club hire than the mud and hire.
Murph Dog Brewing Company says, what about Leonard from Wisconsin, Jim Leonard?
It'd certainly be an interesting name to toss out. I mean, I'd even throw out Luke Fickle just for kicks, frankly. Yeah, he was one of the high profile targets last cycle. Hey, maybe he doesn't want to stick around Madison.
James Gordon and Brian.
No.
Brian Ferentz will be looking for a job. And you know what? He's kind of, he's, you know what? On Brian's defense, he's put up with a lot of crap. So people could throw all sorts of crap at his way and he just like deflected. So, and I guess he knows how to run a very old fashioned, Mark D'Antonio ran about the same offense, didn't he?
They scored points even in 2019. So, have you seen Jay Johnson's offense? Because you're going to get a great time on Saturday watching that shit show.
Okay, well, let's go to the game. What is going on over there? My understanding is quarterbacks. We don't know who the starter is. How much of the team is gone? Let's start with that. People have already entered the transfer portal when Mel Tucker left. Some players, I think one of the best defensive line players they had, entered the transfer portal. Who's left? Is it, do you have a full complement of a team left? I guess on offense, who's the starting quarterback? Let's start there.
Yeah. So I honestly, going into Rutgers, we were pretty obvious. It was pretty obvious to everybody that Caden Hauser was going to get the starting job at Rutgers. At this point, I don't really have any confidence saying that it's for sure going to be Caden or it's for sure going to be Sam Levitt. One thing I do feel pretty confident on is it's not going to be Noah Kim, who was the starter going into the season. And then after Washington, took a couple hits and just never really looked the same after that. It's a little too timid, way too many turnovers. Caden came in and did a great job at Rutgers. And since then, Sam Levitt came in and led the only touchdown drive, and the first one in, I think it was 9 quarters for Michigan State. So, maybe you still want to give Caden a chance. But
now, is he a pocket guy or is he mobile?
He's got some legs. So is Sam. I'm not sure that you'd necessarily consider either of them a true running quarterback by any means, but they both had some legs. Sam extended quite a few plays on the touchdown drive himself, for that matter. Can't remember his exact rushing stats for the quarter, but there was at least one, I want to say 12-yard scamper for the first down that he brought in.
Wow. I looked this up. Michigan State is 127th nationally in scoring offense at 18 points a game. Nebraska is ahead of them at 115th at 20 points a game. Honestly, there's your 3.5 point spread right there. If you just look at the stats and the scoring per game, there it is. Anybody on the offense, anybody offensive playmaker? I guess, to be blunt with you, I look at Michigan State and I look at a team that's really just kind of lost, and people are trying to make it through the season and trying not to I don't want to say lose their shit, but they're trying to stay together as a team and try to get something out of it that's going to be positive going forward. Is that a good assessment?
I think that's pretty much hitting the nail on the head. I mean, hey, you want a job? No, I mean that's exactly right. Yeah. I mean the defense, frankly, has been impressive. Feels a little exaggerating, but it's been impressive compared to what it was the past few seasons, frankly. But they get gassed so bad because the offense is just so bad. I think the line has been the biggest problem. Surprise, surprise, it's the Big Ten. Who doesn't say that their offensive or defensive line is the problem if they're not, the number one team in the league? But yeah, I mean, it's been tough to watch. Special teams has been a huge improvement for the most part, thanks to Jonathan Kim coming in from North Carolina as a transfer kicker. It's nice to see Michigan State get points on the kicking game again for a change. Holds the Kinnick Stadium record now for longest field goal by an opponent in Big Ten play or by an opponent. But yeah, I mean, he had a monster kick at Iowa, for example. Defense did a great job at Minnesota through 3 quarters, and then we're so gassed they couldn't do anything. Same
Right.
with Rutgers too. Frankly, well, I say that that one was more of a special teams letdown, frankly. Although then finally the defense just let Rutgers run right up the middle like it was a Nebraska 1995 team or something for one of their key touchdowns in the fourth quarter there. But yeah, I mean it's a tough situation. You feel bad as a Spartan fan for the players. At least if you're not one of the jerks on Twitter bashing all of them. But yeah, they didn't want Mel Tucker to blow up their season, and they certainly don't want to be losing 49-0 to Michigan. So
Right. Okay. We had a couple of people make, let's see, Urban Meyer. We covered that. We covered Jim Leonard. Top choices. Clay Casselder asks Mr. In Charge because I labeled myself John in Charge. I was thinking of Charles in Charge, and I don't even know what that show is. Clay Casselder says, Mr. In Charge, does this feel like a trap game? No, it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because Matt Rule I think, has done a very good job of looking at his team and saying, we're going 1-0 this week, and that's all we're going to focus on. And quite frankly, I think that's a really good focus. There's been a lot of talk about, there's been a lot of talk from, people on Twitter, guys like me with the blabby mouths, Nebraska is going to win the Big Ten West. I think Scott Docterman, the Iowa writer for The Athletic, said something about it, Nebraska winning the Big Ten West on a podcast. And that's way too much, way too early. Let's just beat Michigan State this weekend and then worry about what comes after that. We do the same thing as Nebraska fans. We start, we've won 3 games in a row and we're suddenly like, I don't want to say the 95 Huskers, but I think people are getting ahead of themselves. In fact, my son, my rotten son at supper said, well, you better win this one because you're not winning the next 3. And I thought, why does your mother let you stay here, you shit ass? It's because
I don't think with how Maryland's October went that it's really fair to say that Michigan State is a trap game when it's Maryland next up on the schedule. I mean, is Maryland the trap game? I think that's the better question Nebraska fans should be talking about, because 2-6 Michigan State with Maryland on the following week. I feel like that game at Madison's the better one to have circled as a tough one. Yeah,
that's true. So, okay. Star players. I mean, we're kind of getting through this, and this is what I was worried about: is there isn't a whole lot on Michigan State's team to talk about, is there?
One guy I definitely want to highlight is Jordan Hall on the defensive side. He has been absolutely phenomenal thus far. Let me get his stats here while I'm trying to highlight him. But yeah, I mean, on the season, he's had 20 solo tackles so far in all 8 games, 41 total tackles, 24 of them solo. So he's got, sorry. Hall's a great true freshman who's playing well above his punching weight, so to speak, in that regard.
And Levitt.
Yeah, so Levitt came in at Minnesota. I believe he played against Michigan as well, to be fair, but I'm going to be honest on that one. That was a game where I was at a wedding during the game, and I did not care enough to punish myself to go back and actually bother watching that at all. But yeah, no, Levitt's not bad. He's seen action in 3 games so far. Has had 78 total yards passing. Not too bad. Long of 22 on the season. So done well. Yeah, Caden's not bad either. We pissed off Boise State getting him. So
what East Lansing, the game's in East Lansing. I mean, what do you see happening in this game? I mean, what do you know about Nebraska? When you look, let's start with that, and then we'll go to that next question next. When you look at Nebraska, what do you know about Nebraska, and what do you think, your impression of Nebraska right now at this point in the season?
I think that they're doing well on what's definitely a rebuild year for them. Kind of the same quarterback trouble that Michigan State's had a little bit, although, really pretty much the same trouble to a degree, not exact same personnel, but just, who do you go with? The guy that you wanted at the start of the season, Noah Kim for Michigan State and Jeff Sims for Nebraska, both injured, because Kim is supposedly getting through an injury right now, as is actually one of our tight ends, actually, one of our key guys, Malik Carr. Your defensive coordinator did have a little bit of a slip up in that Malik Carr transferred from Purdue and was going to be a 2-sport athlete, playing both men's basketball and football. But after last season in 22, he talked with his coaches and they kind of convinced him that he needed to focus exclusively on football. And so he's not actually a 2-star athlete. Keon Coleman also was a 2-star athlete when he first got to Michigan State. Obviously, he's now at Florida State. Nebraska is certainly having some struggles in that regard, figuring out who's the guy. Is it, and I'm probably going to butcher his name, so please correct me, Heinrich Harburg, or
you got that.
or Purdy. Michigan State, is it Caden Hauser, or is it Sam Levitt?
So what do you expect to happen Saturday?
3 yards and a cloud of dust, or more likely a cloud of snow, I guess, based on how the weather's been in the Midwest the last few days. But that's honestly the best I got.
A traditional Big Ten game.
Yeah, it's not going to be like 2021 with Frost tempting fate on a punt call with an Australian punter who, frankly, you can't really rely on his accuracy, and then Michigan State's been doing this 2-man formation for the return the whole time and easily fakes out the team. And, Nebraska, Michigan State stole that game. It's like, well, or Scott Frost just got out coached. One of the two. It wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah, you had to get that in there, huh?
I like to, I was around coordination long enough. I love you guys, but I like making my jokes now, and they're all in good fun. I hope anybody watching understands that. I always say that in good jest. I'm married to a Husker, so I can't be too mean or say anything too harshly. I reserve that for Michigan.
Yeah, there you go. So, oh my God, we're only halfway into this, and we're probably done with football, aren't we? Is there anything really else to ask me some questions?
Well, I'll just make the joke really quick that in 5 days I get to pretend like college football doesn't exist. So, because it's college basketball season. It's the best time of the year.
No, okay. You know what? Let's go into that a little bit. Nebraska. That basically, I get in trouble for saying this on Twitter. Nobody pays attention to Nebraska men's basketball. In the comments section, are any of you 92 people watching this, are any of you going to pay attention to Nebraska men's basketball? Yes or no? I'd like to know. And you know this, Kevin, that Nebraska just really doesn't. I mean, we sell games. People go to games because there isn't a lot else to do in Lincoln. That's been, you and I have argued about that, right?
I'm gonna on camera on a live feed just say those are your words on the there's nothing else to do in Nebraska, not mine. But no, I mean I've been to one game at PBA and it was a non-conference bye game. So please, everybody listening, keep this in mind when I say that. It was a very country club-esque atmosphere for my experience. PBA for a big game is one of the tougher places to play. Tom Izzo said that himself. Fans get into the game. It's a tough place to play. That doesn't necessarily mean that the fans all are huge college basketball fans who live and breathe college basketball.
Right.
Either. But they definitely can have one heck of an atmosphere.
Right. I guess if people chop this out of here, I'll get buried again. Roger Moore says no. JC says no. This guy _Geist says Creighton basketball. Red Wine 65 says, can we trade the basketball team for a quarterback? Which, wow. Wade Farr always comes in with the weird questions. Why is your guest in a forest? Is he a bear? I think that's Michigan State's clock tower.
Yeah, sorry. I'm kind of blocking Beaumont Tower. So Beaumont Tower is a clock tower on campus where Michigan State has a statue of a cedar, which was accidentally used by the guy who designed the Nebraska license plate that had the cedar at the top of the state capitol, and they had to redo it.
You are just full of the most bizarre, freaking weird, knowledgeable. I was going to say trivia, but it's not. You know what? It's not even at the level where they would ask this stuff in trivia games.
So one more thing about that, just really fast.
Okay.
I also spoiled during my oldest brother's college graduation at Michigan State a family urban legend that my great grandpa, who went to Michigan State back when it was still MAC, Michigan Agricultural College.
Ooh.
I think it was still around then. Just before it switched to MSC, Michigan State College. We had always said he got kicked out because he let a cow up Beaumont Tower and that you couldn't lead a cow back downstairs and they had to bring in a crane to evacuate and stuff. Anyway, I saw in the program when I was bored watching the hundreds of people before my brother walked across the stage during his graduation ceremony at the Breslin Center that the Beaumont Tower construction happened after he had been kicked out of Michigan State at the time. So another kind of fun pointless trivia that only people in my family would know, and I busted that, so I don't think my mom's ever gonna forgive me.
Brett says yes, I always do, even when we're bad, which is every year. Dion Pryor says if we win, yes. Roger Moore comes back. NU Nebraska, just so you're thinking Northwestern. I know your mind here. They've been around for a lot. Whoa, there's a lot of comments going back. Linda Wilkins says, does Nebraska have a men's basketball team? Brian Bauer, I follow basketball after college football over. There are a lot of comments about basketball. Most of them. Well, wait a minute here. Wade Farr says not until Hoiberg leaves. Wow. We could go into that. I think Fred Hoiberg is a good coach for Nebraska, honestly, because I think I've talked about this in basketball, and yeah, we're going to talk about basketball for a while. We might as well. Kevin knows basketball very well. Basketball season is almost coming upon us. Honestly, I think what I said about the Michigan State football game is they are lost, and they're trying to get through a season. I don't see any way that Nebraska loses to Michigan State this weekend unless we literally just throw the game away. And that's certainly possible, but I don't think it's probable. Okay, Wade Farr, not until Hoiberg leaves. I think Fred is a good basketball coach for Nebraska because we are the worst program in Power 5 or Power, what is it now, Power 6?
Well, it's about to be Power 5 again, thanks to the Pac-12 imploding.
That's true. But Nebraska is the worst men's basketball program in the power conferences, and until we win an NCAA tourney game, we're going to stay there. I think Hoiberg has done a decent job bringing in recruits. I think he's done the thing that he needed to do, which is bring in what he thought was going to work with transfers and stuff. And it didn't work because Nebraska is uniquely us. And now he's figured out, I think, a formula for going forward. So I disagree with you, Wade. What do you think of Hoiberg?
I like him. I mean, that's originally why I reached out to Corn Nation about writing college basketball. Was I was excited that the Huskers hired Hoiberg, and really kind of, frankly, gave a jolt of life to the program in a way that, at least during my period with a Husker as my significant other, that I hadn't really, frankly, seen out of the athletic department when it came to that sport. I think he certainly had a disappointing start. There's no getting around that. But unlike the head football coach who came in around the same time as him, I think he kind of figured out how to retool and had the maturity and the experience at that level to figure out that his system doesn't work in the Big Ten necessarily. And what he needs to do is X, Y, or Z. And he definitely, I think, kind of started to show that last year. It also helped that he had a good point guard that he got out of the transfer portal. And I'll be curious to see how he does this season, given that Sam, why am I blanking on his name? Other than I'm just getting up there in age.
Don't say an age.
Yeah. But no, the hometown Lincoln guy,
Sam Hoiberg.
No, sorry, not his son.
Oh, God, now I'm blanking too. Yeah, you're right. Sam Gressel. Oh my God, how did
Gressel,
we forget?
yeah, yep.
So easy. I haven't even looked at our basketball team this year. I mean, we played an exhibition against Doane, which we won, obviously. But half the team was injured, including the big guy we have that was attacked while he was on a scooter, which is just, you look at it, and then we do have one of the most exciting players in the nation in Keisei Tominaga, and he basically about ripped his whole foot off, spraining his ankle. So
yeah, that looked ugly in the still shot.
Yeah. My understanding it is this not as bad as it could have been, but we'll wait and see what happens. Marcus comes in with Greisel.
Thank you. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Same here. But I saw today somebody on Twitter already predict a Final Four that included Michigan State and Creighton.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. It would be let me think on the math for a second. Believe it would mean Malik Hall, right? Or was Hall there in 19 when they last made it? Sorry, I'm trying to think the math in my head of the fact that Tom Izzo has had a Big Ten or a Final Four for every single player who's graduated as a senior, started as a freshman and graduated in his program, with the exception of one class, and that was in 2014, thanks to that stupid damn UConn game in the Elite Eight. But yeah, I mean, he besides that one class, he's always done that, and this year he's going to have to do that again for his players who are set to lose eligibility as seniors, if I'm not fudging the math. So I think Malik Hall might be there because 1920, because Hall was a freshman when COVID happened. So just purely based on that, the odds are somewhat likely that he'd be back again. But yeah, I mean, this team's a strong one for MSU. They're ranked number 4 in the preseason, and there's a good reason for that, which is they have one of the best guard duos in the country with Tyson Walker and AJ Hogard, and they've got a lot of good freshmen that came in. Cone Carr was absolutely just lighting it up against Hillsdale, and also with against Tennessee, I believe, with quite a few alley-oop dunks. So should be an exciting season.
So when does this start?
So they did already play Hillsdale, which is actually my alma mater. Definitely was rooting for MSU in that one myself, but no offense to the Chargers. And then they lost to Tennessee in a 1-point charity exhibition that benefited the Maui Strong Fund. That one was a little interesting because it was originally supposed to be a close scrimmage, and in those, coaches tend to not necessarily be as focused on wins losses, especially
Right.
Izzo. He likes to kind of tinker around with the roster, see what works, what doesn't, do some things that set the team up in a tough situation. But I mean, the Spartans trailed by, what was it, 12-27, and only had like 15-1 at early in the game, and then later on like 12-27, 32, something like that, and they still only ended up losing by 1 point, and on a call that was a little questionable. Again, hometown crowd. It was at the Breslin Center, so take that with a little grain of salt on saying it was a controversial call. But yeah, I mean, they're looking tough. It'll be a less than normal daunting schedule for the Spartans this year, just like it will for Nebraska compared to last season in the non-conference season. Not going to be a lot of challenges for either the Huskers or the Spartans early on compared to normal. But at least for Michigan State, there's still matchups against Duke, Baylor. I think a good chance at, I want to say UConn in, no, I'm sorry, not UConn. Why am I saying that? They're not in a normal tournament this year. It's Arizona out in Palm Springs.
So you've looked at basketball. You're already there.
I've been there for like a month and a half, John. I'm gonna be
okay.
honest.
All right. How about this game? The football game is going to be in East Lansing. Are there going to be like 100 people there?
I mean, I think there's going to be more than that. For starters, this is actually the last true home game for Michigan State in the first weekend of November already, because the Spartans gave up a home game in order to satisfy the NBC primetime requirement of the new media contract, which, yeah, okay. Oh, it's the Midwest. You're used to cold, blah, 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 blah. You know what? I mean, who wants to go out and watch a team that is going to be maybe looking at 4-8 at that point at best, with a win over Nebraska and Indiana at best left? You could get to 4 wins, and it's already past that. So the Black Friday night game is going to be in Ford Field instead of Spartan Stadium. So that's going to help, because at least some heat, get some prospects in from local Detroit schools, things like that. In a way, it was the best situation for Michigan State, frankly, out of the situation that they were dealt with. But that's my way of getting around to saying that most teams have already had a game on Peacock. Deal with it, because you get a big fat check. And you know what? Paying $5 for 1 month of Peacock at least saves you more than going out to a bar to watch it, because you'll spend more on your bar tab.
That is true. And we used to pay $50 for pay-per-view, or 30. I had a question. Oh, again, football. Do you think this Michigan State's, let me phrase this. If Mel Tucker wouldn't have happened the way it happened, and Mel Tucker was still the head coach, where do you think the Spartans would be now in their season?
That is a good question. I think they'd still be looking at bowl contention. There's still a large issue with things like injuries that are legitimate injuries, not players, opting out, pretending like it's an injury. That there are key players that are hurt and trying to get healthy, but those would still exist, obviously. And this is not a team that was going to challenge for the Big Ten East, let alone, the Big Ten West is garbage. They might actually have competed for the Big Ten West for all I know, in that. But there would have been so much less noise from off the field,
right,
and so much more focus and continuity and everything. I think legitimately you could be looking at them being a potential bowl team, most likely at this point. But I mean, they had Iowa right up until the end there. Rutgers going into the fourth quarter, and then you have the punter not looking, I guess it was, and yeah, it was a little high, but he should, as a punter, still be able to catch it right here or so where it went, and then he fumbles it, and Rutgers catches it, and rather recovers it in the end zone for a touchdown, and then their offense proceeds to, like I joked earlier, be 1995 Nebraska and just march right down their throat. Yeah, stuff like that. Those games were certainly winnable for Michigan State. Had there not been so much noise off field, I think they might have been wins. It's not like Mel Tucker was justifying his 2021 contract extension, but
right.
He wasn't going to lead the best 3-9 team in the history of college football either. So,
okay. Earlier comment from Paul says Lance at Kansas is for sure on our radar. Lance Leipold. What do you think of that guy?
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the names who is up there on the list. That's for sure. Yeah, done a phenomenal job at a basketball school. I think Michigan State's maybe a little more even as a football basketball school than Kansas, but yeah, the Kansas basketball program is certainly interesting in a comparison to Michigan football in doubling down on things. So, but yeah, no, I'm sorry. Lance Leipold would be a good target to potentially consider as well.
Okay, Evan, this is earlier. Evan Zyla says, I am going to UNL in the spring for broadcasting and sport. So I assume it's a she is young. Well, good luck to you, Evan. I just wanted to point that out. And then she asks, do you think Double H is our best chance to win against Michigan State? Heinrich Harburg, yeah, I do. I mean, you could argue about how high his upside is, and I think next year Nebraska is going to have to find a quarterback in the portal, somebody who's experienced. But for right now, I think Heinrich Harburg is, just settle down and play the game. Just focus on this. Focus on running out of bounds instead of taking a hit when you get the chance. Focus on sliding instead of taking a hit when you get the chance. And there was one of throw the ball away. If you're going to make the pass, you don't have to make every play the Super Bowl. It doesn't have to be a winner. You just have to not throw the ball to the other team. So yeah, I do. I think Nebraska's in, I don't want to say dire straits with their quarterback, but it's rough. And yes, Heinrich Harburg gives us the best chance for winning. James Boardman, we have to bring this up. Bobby Knight passed away today. Thoughts? That's for you.
Yeah, I mean, sad. Thoughts to his family. He had one hell of a run in Bloomington, leading IU. That chair throwing gift still will be one of the best things in college sports for all time to come. I hope he had a peaceful passing with his family, and I hope IU. I was happy a while back. IU finally had him back on campus, and I'm glad he got to do a visit back to Assembly Hall while he was still with us all.
I guess I don't, I never followed basketball that closely because I'm a Nebraska guy. And, but always seeing him just so, God, he was a character. You know what I mean? Just the what was it he said about the media? He said most of us learn to read and write by the second grade, and then some people go on to better, and most of us go on to better things. About sports writers. I mean, he had so many lines and so many moments of which you went, holy shit, that guy's a handful. But he certainly stood out as a giant in basketball, and they don't make him like that anymore. And sometimes I wonder if that's good or bad, but I guess it is. We get so bent out of shape about anything that happens anymore with coaches or with players or anything at all where they might, they might swear at people or they might say things or they might get angry on set. We get so just bent out of shape about all that stuff with ourselves that I don't know. It's kind of a shame. Okay, Ted Hilker comes in and says this. John should set up a weekly Jays show because he loves the Jays, LOL. I have honestly thought maybe we should do something with Creighton other than, burn them alive or something. I have honestly entertained way back in the back of my head late at night when I couldn't sleep and I was angry about the world. Maybe I should cover Creighton. Maybe I should have somebody that wants to talk about Creighton every once in a while. What do you think, Kevin?
I think if UNL isn't going to get men's hockey, then UNO should be the sort of go-to Big Ten program for men's ice hockey. That's what I think. That's what I think about the Creighton Blue Jays men's basketball program.
Okay. What else do we have? Anything else?
I'll make the joke. If Harburg is gonna throw it away, please throw it away in the direction of Jaden. I probably gonna butcher his name. Jaden Mangum from Michigan State. Oh, Angelo Gross wouldn't necessarily be a bad choice either, but.
Okay, these guys are going on about Peacock, Wade Forrest, but if we pay $5 this time to watch a Nebraska game, how much for the next Nebraska game on Peacock or an internet-only game? They're pretty consistent on their streaming costs. I think all of them are like $5.99 a month or something like that. Disney Plus, Hulu. Well, Hulu Live is more expensive because it's live. I'm thinking of one other. Well, come on. Paramount, there's another one. They have all the Star Trek stuff. I'm going to say this. We already have Peacock in my household because the EPL plays on Peacock. And my household watches English Premier League soccer. You can also get some funky rugby stuff going on. And that's always interesting just because, or maybe Australian rules football. And those are always interesting because they're so weird compared to American football. All right.
Yeah,
I was going
to say we got Peacock back in, I want to say June. They had a brief flash sale for like $20 or something for a full year subscription. And I knew Michigan State was going to have at least one game on at that point because for football for Washington. And you would know that they were likely to have at least a couple games in basketball as well. Which, okay, you know what? I'm sorry for all the complaining about, oh, we have to have one football game on Peacock. You know what? It's against who do you guys have on it again? Maryland.
Maryland.
Game
yeah.
It's against Maryland. Is it the Michigan State Michigan basketball game? No. Then I'm sorry, but like, big deal. No offense.
You can get you guys can get a trial.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I get the point. Okay, it's yet another thing. We already spent X amount of money on cable. Now we need to do streaming for this. If you want to watch a lot of volleyball games for Nebraska or women's basketball, you got to get the Big Ten Plus subscription as well, which also is a ton of money. You guys all like baseball, so you definitely need that for baseball. But at the end of the day, you can get around it. We didn't mind as well because we had started Brooklyn Nine-Nine on Netflix and only gotten into like season 2, early season 3, somewhere in there when it got pulled and put on Peacock, and we were kind of sitting around waiting for a reason to get Peacock, and this was it. So, but with the streaming wars for now, it's coming that those aren't going to be $5 by all means, but Peacock still seems kind of desperate. So,
all right. Ted Hilker says there's not many Jays streams out there. The honest to God truth is, you guys, college football pays the bills, and it pays the bills on the internet too. And when when you look out there, and maybe this is Michigan State. Are there a lot of Michigan State football podcasts, or are there a lot of Michigan State basketball podcasts, or are there, because in Nebraska, there are like 80 or 100 Nebraska football podcasts, but nobody really talks about basketball. And I understand, we're not a very good basketball program, but I still don't think there's a lot of basketball coverage compared to football because football is just that much bigger of a sport. Am I completely off there?
I think for MSU specific outlets, we cover basketball as much as we do football, and we get a lot of interest from it. But Michigan State's one of the kind of right there on the edge. Are they a blue blood or not? They're arguably a modern blue blood program kind of thing. So even financially, Michigan State is one of the programs that is one of the richest with men's basketball income, although with the schedule Izzo plays in the non-conference, a lot of that gets eaten up by travel in terms of expenses sometimes. But the point being is that even at Nebraska, the men's basketball program pays the bills for the women's basketball program. And that is roughly where the dollars stop. Football pays for literally everything else.
Yeah.
Particularly at a program like Nebraska. But as far as fan interest, it's pretty close up there for MSU. The outlets that do a football podcast will tend to have a basketball podcast as well, and get a fair amount of interest. There's so many more games. It doesn't equate to the same level of interest that goes into 12 college football games, at least in a winning season. But
all right. Brad Wilson says, I want to see a turnover-free ball game. That'd be interesting if both sides don't turn the ball over.
It would be. Spartans came very, very close to that on Saturday at Minnesota. I may be misremembering, but the only turnover I remember off the top of my head is very late in the game. Sam Levitt threw an interception when Michigan State was getting close to the red zone. But that was it. Before that, they were +3 on the turnover margin. So it would be interesting to see if the Spartans could do that. And Nebraska certainly had a problem with that, especially with Jeff Sims. Although I know at least one writer for Coordination, I won't out him, but he pointed out that Harburg doesn't really have that much less of a tendency to throw the ball over than Sims. But I don't know the stats off the top of my head to back that up.
Yeah, we argue a lot on Slack. Anonymous says putting Nebraska games on Peacock is the worst thing happening this month, and that includes 2 wars that might end humanity. This guy knows nothing. We do act like that sometimes, I swear to God. Especially on Twitter. Mike, on Twitter, Nebraska Twitter is amazing. Okay, James Boardman has this, and we'll probably do this as the last question. How is the Sparty recruiting class holding up?
Well, I'm going to go back to the last one for just one fast joke, which is, if I had to buy a new car battery today instead of yesterday, I would have said having to buy a new car battery out of nowhere was the worst thing this month. But that did happen October 31st. So I'll grant you that I can't argue that. Michigan State's lost several recruits, but as of right now, the Spartans still have a decent class, and they have 10 guys holding on. Several guys are still making visits elsewhere, and they aren't necessarily done with MSU, but they need to know who the next coach is going to be before they stay committed on that early signing day. So that will be interesting to see what happens. A lot of them are close with their the position coaches, obviously, that were more primary in recruiting them, and they like them, but seeing who's going to replace them, because I don't think very many of them are going to stay and be retained on the next staff. And I don't think there's a single Spartan fan out there, for the most part, that will be sad to see most of them go.
Okay, I lied. Brett says, Kevin or John, which is your favorite opponent stadium you've been to, either basketball or football?
You want to take that one first, John?
Well, the thing is I have not been to a lot of places, I guess, not as many as I should be. For being as nuts about football as I have. I really enjoyed going to Madison, to Camp Randall, except for the games. And I live in Minnesota, so it's unfair to, but I back when Minnesota had good teams on their basketball teams, I think Williams Arena is a really kind of a cool place to watch a game. Mostly because the fans there will start toward the end of the game, or when they want to crush the opponent, they'll all get up and start stomping and the whole freaking building shakes. And if you're not used to that, it's terrifying. It literally feels like the building's coming down around you. So I think that's it. Probably Madison and Williams Arena.
Okay, yeah. So I haven't done a ton of basketball arenas yet. I mean, I guess I'll be a homer and say that the Breslin Center. Oh no, I'm sorry. I have to pick an opponent, don't I? So that'd be cheating. The Palestra was kind of cool. The game sucked. I sat in front of one of the worst fans I've ever experienced in college sports ever, but the venue was cool and the historicalness of it. If I can cheat a little bit to differentiate, the stadium fan experience for 2013 Michigan State at Nebraska was probably the best, but my favorite actual stadium itself would probably be 2014 Oregon. Autzen Stadium is just fun. It's a unique design. I think it's cool. It's loud. That steepness of it really helps with that, and the surrounding scenery is pretty gorgeous out there. Washington's just a little. I did that trip last year, and sailgating's cool, but the stadium itself is just a little weird. Those gigantic upper deck sections. I'd give the edge to Oregon over Washington, and those are my favorite over Big Ten stadiums that I've been to. But I haven't been to a lot in the Big Ten West. I've only done Michigan State games at Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Whereas I've also done a Michigan State game at the Rose Bowl, Oregon, and Washington now. So it's the same number of Big Ten West stadiums as Big Ten future Western West stadiums. But I have also been to a Nebraska at Northwestern game, and I'm excited to see that one get demolished and rebuilt with what they're gonna do, because
they have decided,
those like turret things are kind of cool. The unique curve of it's nice, but besides that, it's not a great stadium unless you're a visiting fan who wants a cheap ticket.
So Northwestern is going to rebuild Ryan Field.
Yeah, I haven't seen the latest on the city council vote. Last I saw, the planning council had vetoed their request for hosting concerts there. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to happen, because it's the city council who actually gets to choose that, is my understanding. And then one of the things that was mentioned by like a city council member, I think, or like a city planner or something, was the suggestion that they build a parking deck at Northwestern's athletic department. The other NU in the Big Ten had said that they didn't want to do that because they didn't want to encourage fans to drive as a sort of olive branch to the local community. And also that would raise the cost of the stadium project by like, I think $30 million or something. So it was cost prohibitive and not something that they wanted to do. Although, I'm sorry, just one more random tangent is this came up in a meeting last week during my day job that I thought was kind of interesting, is parking garages moving forward are actually gonna have a problem where they may have to start marking off spaces the more EVs proliferate,
right,
because of the weight problem, because structurally they can't support the weight of an EV. Just thought that was kind of while I mentioned parking garage, it kind of triggered that in my memory from a meeting last week about it. So
I never thought of that.
Yeah. One of the other interesting things was I had literally just the night before read an article from a longtime EV owner who had explained that tires, and after I read this, it's like, duh, that's common sense now that you think about it. But they go through tires almost like twice as fast as an ICE vehicle, just because of the weight. Again, they're so much heavier, and because of the weight, not only do they wear through tires faster, they also have to have a higher quality rubber that costs more. So it costs almost double as much, and you go through them on average almost twice as fast. So
wow,
another interesting thing just to keep in mind when debating, what that next car is, for those of you who can afford 7% interest rates. I'm sorry, I'm going way off topic here.
Yeah. Okay. Last comment, Fred Sacco, because Fred was here. We have to have a comment by him. He says, John, I'm disappointed. This night guy is too normal. I'm still waiting for you to get an opposing team guest who's nuts as you. Well, Fred, if they're as nuts as me, the chances are they're probably in jail or in a mental institution. So, I try to seek them out too, but you always have to go through a lot of clearance to get through, and then the prison won't grant them, streaming. It's really live streams. No, absolutely not. There's none of that.
I saved my anti-Michigan crazy rants with the tinfoil hats for off camera. Sorry, folks.
All right. I think that's going to do it. We made it an hour. Do you want to predict a score? Predict the score. It's not a question. You have to do it.
6-4.
Oh my God. Really?
No, I'm kidding. No, neither defense is probably good enough to get safeties. Okay. You know what? I'm sorry. That was going around Twitter earlier today and I forgot about it. So all props to Nebraska because these stats do technically count now having played Nebraska. But the Huskers went up against last month. There was this bragging point about how they have one of the best defenses in October among FBS teams. Now, the offenses that the Huskers faced were number 7, number 8, and number 10 in the Big Ten. And again, to be fair, those also are stats now post playing Nebraska.
Right.
And Nebraska's defense definitely did a decent, good job last month. But always take stats with a grain of salt, unless you're a homer, which sometimes I like to do as well. But yeah, I mean, let's go with realistic score though. Nebraska 21, Michigan State 17.
So you're going with what I said earlier. The one Nebraska scores about 20 points a game and Michigan State about 18. So it's a good prediction. Oh, I'm going to say 24-10 because, I am a little bit more of a homer. And I just think that it's, I honestly think that it's really hard to keep your shit together when you're having a team that's just progressively trying to keep their crap together and they've lost their head coach and the new guy is coming here. The new guy is just promoted and he's like, oh my God, what do I have to do to keep this team together? I think it gets way more difficult the more you lose. So I don't expect a blowout. And certainly with Nebraska's offense, God knows anything can happen, but I do expect a Nebraska win. So here's Colin J. Nebraska 77, Michigan State 78. Which, sounds like
is that for December 10th?
That will be in East Lansing. What is the name of their basketball place? Breslin?
Oh no, sorry. The December 10th game will be in at PBA in Lincoln. I will be at that.
We will win that one.
So
we will win that one.
Yeah, the day before December 9th, the women's team will be in East Lansing playing the MSU women's team at the Breslin Center. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think the teams only play once in Lincoln this year, but I could be wrong. But yeah, Michigan State plays at Lincoln on December 10th, and barring flight trouble, I will be at that game covering it. So we'll see. My second game there.
Ted Hilker says 42-10 Nebraska. I think that's I don't know if we scored 31 points against Purdue, and that was quite frankly kind of impressive. David Matney says 24-10 Nebraska. Fred Sacco 20-10 Nebraska. Husker Chuck with 27-10 Nebraska. All these Nebraska people. No offense, only defense says, I think we win in a close 8 overtime game, 74-72. After the third overtime, they can only go for 2-point conversions.
So a lot of 2-point conversions. I'm down for that.
Brian Bauer says Nebraska 27-17. Okay, we need to go before I find more comments to use.
We need an offensive lineman to fall over backwards without being touched before the ball is snapped. It has been 9 long years since we got that gift for the world. We need it to happen again. It's going to happen again this Saturday. The wind is going to catch somebody, and they're going to fall over like Paul Bunyan falls a tree.
Okay, there is the discount code going across the banner at the bottom. Blah, blah, blah. See why we have to end. There's a discount code for merch going across the bottom. That's the only place this is going to display. So you have to watch this show to get 15% off till the end of November. I'm just going to experiment with people. That's it. We're done. I should actually have an outro for this show, but I'm not that good at these things. I guess I already asked for your closing comments.
You stay classy, San Diego.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Good night, Kevin.